All right. So today we are going to talk about portfolios. And we have Dyuthi here with us. And we also have Maya. I'm Peter. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Peter.
Hey.
So Dyuthi has prepared a presentation. And Dyuthi, I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself just briefly, right?
Mhm.
And as I do that, I'm going to share my screen and share what you've prepared.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Dyuthi. I am a Master of Architecture candidate at the BEC. I am graduating very soon in the fall, so that's going to be really quick. But I'm really passionate about preparing portfolios. I did participate in a couple of workshops with Boss Noma, and I have a little bit of experience with that, and I do keep improving my skills in the various softwares, and I hope that this is going to be really useful for you, especially in your professional life and moving forward.
Great, thank you. And I'll let you, let's talk about portfolios.
Great. So if you move on to the first slide. Okay, so this is sort of how I envision the start of a portfolio. I typically, what I do is I sketch out a typical template of the various pages of your portfolio. So on the top left here, you can see this is how your project page could look like. This is just an example. You know, it's totally up to you how you'd like to customize it. So you can see here at the top left, there's the title, and then you have your project description at the top right, and then you have a glimpse of your axon at the bottom, and then some information on the left. And this is typically what a good balance of what you'd like to show on your typical project page. And then just below that is the table of contents, and here, you know, it's really nice to have again a glimpse of different projects you're going to be showing. So on the third image at the bottom, you can see these are just snapshots of different projects I worked on. It's just to show, give the reader an idea of what they're in for when they're perusing your portfolio. And then on the right here are just some simple steps on how to get started. So first is draw your simple sketch with the main elements that should be featured in your portfolio. Second, curate the projects. Now this is really important because you can go up to 10 or 20 projects in your portfolio, but you really have to make sure that you capture your reader's attention. So keep it to a maximum of 5 to 6 projects. Another really great tip to get started is to look at Pinterest and maybe create a Pinterest board where you're inspired by the different types of portfolios and the colors and the fonts that you've used. I've also created a board that might be helpful for you, and the link is down below. And then moving on here, when it comes to designing your template, the first thing you need to think about is whether you'd like to go with a portrait or landscape format. Now, the landscape format is typically preferred in this industry, but if you can make a case for a portrait orientation, definitely go for it. It really depends on your project types and the different elements that you're trying to show in your portfolio.
So I think like as here, like when you start to submit a portfolio, this portfolio, it's supposed to present yourself. And first you present yourself, and also when you're presenting yourself, important to know who's your audience. So you can like change your contact based on your audience. Either than professional or academic, either than you want to express it like more artists, more details, more image, more type. So all that, it's depend on what is your personality you try to show in this portfolio, and who's your audience. Anyone want to add something?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's really important to, make sure your portfolio is tailored to your personality so that people can see who you are when they look at it.
Yeah, I also want to linger on this for a second, which is the right-hand side, minimalistic or expressive. And we can create portfolios which are minimalistic. And I think what we're getting at there is that they are technical, right? Or they are expressing what can I do? There also is who am I? I am expressing who I am. And a portfolio shouldn't always just be about what can I do? It's what do I bring to this?
Yeah, I agree with you.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like,
And once you have your template, here comes the fun part, picking out, your favorite fonts, your colors. A great resource is the Adobe Color platform that was recently introduced. And this is all part of your Creative Cloud account with your BAC ID. So definitely make use of that. And I'm sure you know the Pantone library. They have a Pantone color of the year that they introduce every time. So that's always interesting to look out for. But this is a great place to start if you're just looking for complementary colors and different swatches that you can use when you're starting out. This is a typical sample template, and we'll get more into this later. But as you can see from one of the sketches that you saw before, you have the title of the project at the top left corner, and then you have a bio at the top right. And this is really a spread format, which explains the whole project in one spread. And the idea is to tell a story from the left-hand side to the right. And as you can see here, you have some information about the project. At the bottom left corner, you have the client details, location, type, scope, and your role. And then you have an Axon view that would describe what the project is. And then just some renders at the far right corner. And that would really tell a story of your project. And once you have that in place, it's important to think about what the sequence you'd like to follow. That is a design in itself, right? So you want to make sure that you have your best projects up front and really tailor it to the firm that you're applying for. So if you are applying for a firm that's focused on interior projects, you want to have your interior projects up front, really in the spotlight, so that your audience knows, if they do get to a point where they've seen 2 projects and they want to move on, they've seen your best work, and then they move on to the next portfolio. That's typically how the industry works. But this is just a very basic structure of how you can go from your cover page, table of contents, resume, cover letter, projects, and then some additional graphic design work or illustrations. This is a very bare bones process of how to really get started. And I think this is especially important because we are often overwhelmed by the amount of work your portfolio brings. And that is the case if you are just starting out, you're just a recent graduate, or you have 40 years of experience. And as you can see here, this is a step-by-step process on how to get started, all the way to tailoring your portfolio according to the firm. And it's really up to you how you'd like to customize this process, but this is just a starting point for you to get your feet wet and get started with your portfolio. So first off, you want to gather your projects, put them all in a folder, start naming them, give them some structure, and then you have your template, which we talked about before. You have your sketch, which will eventually lead to a really beautiful InDesign template. And then third is deciding what software to use.
And what software do we use? I mean, we have InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, right? And there's differences here. InDesign being a layout program, Photoshop being a pixel-based raster program, right? Editing these things, Illustrator being a vector-based program, and then etc. Whether that's like Procreate or a tablet or sketching or any kind of open source software. What software do you use? And I don't think it matters. I think the point here is that you decide a software that feels good to you.
Yeah, I agree. And personally, I find Photoshop to be a lot more easy to use just because I have more experience with that. So I tend to lean in that direction, but it's totally up to you and what you feel most comfortable with. And step 4 would be, once you have these curated projects in a folder, you want to start dragging and dropping them into InDesign and the template that you've created. Once you have all of that and you feel confident about it, you want to start really sending that out to a couple of potential mentors who can review it from an industry point of view and give you feedback. So you have about 1 or 2 weeks to revise and refine. And then you start sending that portfolio out to firms or to your school if that's a segment 2 portfolio. So it really depends. But you want to make sure you get that time, 1 or 2 weeks, to revise and refine and edit any necessary pages or templates. And post-production is something that's most often forgotten about because that's, it's almost like an afterthought, and you're not really sure what to edit. But again, this is where the review and feedback from your mentor would come into play, and you can use this to edit any images that you might want to. So if you're going with a more monochromatic feel, then you can take your image from InDesign, link it back to a Photoshop file, edit it there, and then that would synchronously be synced back to your InDesign template. So this is, it is, I would say it's an afterthought, but it's definitely an important part of the process to consider when creating a portfolio. So now you're done. You have your portfolio ready. Where do you start displaying it? That's important, right? Because everything is online now. Everything is easily accessible, and that's really important. One really popular platform is Issue, which is where I have my portfolio displayed. And this is great because you can really play with your privacy filters. And so if you want to send it to a particular organization or an employer, then you only send it to them and it's not visible for everyone. But again, you also have the option to keep it public in case you want to. Behance is another one, which is also really good. Squarespace is becoming increasingly popular just because you can create your website with your URL, which really kind of is tailored to you and your audience. And that's also a work in progress. So it's not a static document, you can keep adding to it. And it's also really accessible in this industry. A quick recap of what we just talked about. These are some really good points just to keep in mind when you're, just when you're done, just kind of go and revise your portfolio. Make sure that your file size is at 5 MB. This is an industry standard. Most firms do request the file size. So there's a lot of ways to do that. You can use smallpdf.com, which is a web-based compressor, PDF compressor. Look at these different ways. We can even talk about it later, but there are a lot of ways to really compress it down. Even if you have a 20 MB to a 5 MB, it's possible. Keep only relevant projects. Again, if you are applying for a residential firm, you want to make sure you're only showing those kinds of projects and not something that's not relevant. Tell a story. This is really important too.
Tell a story, to me, again, is very important because it's your story, right? The point of a portfolio is not necessarily to just get a job or to do what you think is necessary. It's to demonstrate who you are and to also find a place where you belong. And so what is the story of that portfolio? And I think that that has everything to do with what we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our stories are very complex. I know this next step here, edit, edit, edit. We are continuing to edit our stories. We are continuing to go back and reflect on our stories. And using these kind of programs helps us do that, reflect on it, and to think about it. And sometimes, to be honest, just have a conversation with ourselves about our own story.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter. And also like about edit. Take a break, like finish the portfolio, take a break for an hour, 2 hour, maybe a day, then come back and see the portfolio like as your first time you seeing. Because like sometimes when you take a look for like 5 hours you've been working in the portfolio and you edit it in the end and print it, you discover a lot of mistakes. It happened either then with the image, with the typo, with the font, a lot of like mistake. It's you see it after you print the portfolio. So if you finish early and you try to like edit it, like review it couple of times, you will have the chance to edit it and submit it in good condition.
Great, thank you, Maya. That was very well put. Yeah, always looking at it from a third person's perspective helps, because it's really hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes and do that. But that is part of what we do on a daily basis as aspiring architects. And very beautifully put, Peter. I think really carving out a niche for ourselves and telling a story using that is rare to see these days. And very often we see portfolios that look like they're just from an online template and don't really tell you who you are. But if you can do that, that's incredible.
I agree. And as we wrap up this conversation here, I want to ask a question, which is, what is the most important thing to you about a portfolio? And I'm going to ask Maya first and then Dyuthi. So what is the most important thing for you as you work on a portfolio?
While I'm working or like after I finish, like while I'm working, it's to keep in track that my project is clear, all the projects like appear as one solid thing, and it represents itself. Even if I'm not there to present it, it's the portfolio. It's representing itself. While I'm working, I'm trying to make sure that whoever seeing the portfolio doesn't have any question mark about image, comment, or caption, or why I'm placing this project here or this image here. And also clarity. It's like, for me, it's like really important thing, how I embrace the image, choosing the background instead of like dark background. Like I most likely go with the light background in case like if anything happened with the printer, the light background, I feel like it's more strong and keep the clarity of the image as well. Yeah, and also like as much as it's like for me um simple and less and presentable, it is powerful.
That's great. I definitely agree with all of that. It's very important to keep it clear and concise, and make sure that you're not overwhelming your audience, right? That's really important. But also, I think we've talked about this. Just showing some personality. That's really important. If you think you might have looked at a friend's portfolio, you might try to follow that, but remember that you are an individual and you also have your own personality, and you want to really show that in your portfolio. And that's the only that's the only tool that you can use to show, right? I mean, that's the one thing that goes out there, that goes to different people's, different firms and different institutions, and that's the first thing they see when they see your name. So you want to associate that with something beautiful. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Great. Let's wrap it up here. Thank you, Maya,
Great.
for helping us. Thank you, Dyuthi, for leading us in
Thank
this.
you.
And there's definitely more content out there, but we'll end it here for now.